Hey guys, welcome back to another lesson. Today I'd like to talk to you about the relation between dominant seventh chords and diminished seventh chords. So this will help you achieve this sort of jazzy sound, something along these lines. Okay, so what's the trick? What's this about? First of all, you have to, or let me remind you what diminished seventh chords are and dominant seventh chords are. So if you want to build a diminished seventh chord, you pick a note, let's say C, and you count up 3 semitones, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So you count up 3 sets of 3 semitones, and what you end up with is a collection of 4 notes that constitute the C diminished seventh chord. Let's do another example. Let's do F. So start with F, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you have an F diminished seventh chord. Now you can invert these chords just like any other chord. So you can take this F diminished seventh, move the F up an octave, get an inversion, move the A flat up an octave, get an inversion, move the B up an octave, get an inversion, and when you do it for a 4th time, you go back to the original position you started out from. Notice that as we do these inversions, we actually get other diminished seventh chords. So for example, the first inversion of F diminished 7 is actually A flat diminished 7. Then when we invert again, we get B diminished 7. And then again we get D diminished 7 and back to F diminished 7. So all of these diminished chords, B diminished 7, A diminished 7, F diminished 7, A flat diminished 7, B diminished 7, and D diminished 7, all are the same in the sense that they all have the same set of notes or made of the same set of notes. Now how are these related to dominant seventh chords? Now, to show you, let's say that we'll play a G dominant 7th, which is made of the notes G, B, D, and F. Now we can add higher degrees to this chord. We can add the 9th, let's say, or then the 11th and 13th. And we're only going to keep the 9th. Now we can do, sometimes people either sharpen the 9th or flatten the 9th. So if you sharpen it, you get a G dominant 7 sharp 9. If you flatten it, you get a G dominant 7 flat 9. And this is the chord that will interest us. Because if you look at this collection of notes, you'll see that you're playing a G for the bass, and the remainder of the notes here make up a B diminished 7 chord. This means that anytime you see a G dominant 7 flat 9, you can play a B diminished 7th chord. Now remember that the B diminished 7th chord is just like a D diminished 7th chord, just like an F diminished 7th chord, and it's just like an A flat diminished 7th chord. So we can play any of these inversions over the bass of G. Here's number 1, here's number 2, number 3, and number 4. If we do it again, we're back at the position we started out from. And this is kind of a nice insight playing dominant 7th chords, thinking of them not as dominant 7th chord necessarily, but as diminished 7th chords. Now, what I played at the beginning is actually precisely doing that. Let's say that you have a progression that starts from C major. We're in the key of C major. And the next chord is an A dominant 7. Now, we can take this A dominant 7 and add the flattened 9th. And if you look at the right hand, what I'm playing here is a D flat diminished 7th. So instead of playing an A dominant 7, we can play a D flat diminished 7. So if our A was leading into a D minor, our D flat diminished 7 can also lead into a D minor. So we can have either C major, A dominant 7, D minor, or C major, D flat diminished 7, D minor 7, or D minor, any variation of D minor. So this is kind of an interesting trick. We don't even have to use this particular inversion of this diminished chord, we can use something else. So instead of playing C, A dominant 7, D minor 7, G dominant 7, I can play C, B flat diminished 7, because remember B flat diminished 7, this thing here, is an inversion of this, and this can be thought of as the upper set of notes in A dominant 7. And now I can do the same thing with a G. Instead of playing just a boring old G dominant 7, I can play a G over a bass of, in this case, A flat diminished 7. So I hope this gave you an idea of how to incorporate or maybe expand on the voicings of your diminished 7th, not diminished, but I should say dominant 7th chords, and kind of the relationship between the two. So anywhere you have a dominant 7th chord, consider substituting it for the appropriate diminished 7th chord, just like we've done in this particular video. That's it for now. I hope you've learned something interesting, and I'll see you next time.